We're back with the Little Cup World Cup tiebreaker action between India and France. It's a best of three. The first team to get 2 wins will win the tiebreak and move on to the next round of the playoffs. And we start off with Generation 8 Little Cup between Detective Noisy and Alkion. And Detective Noisy is Team India. We're using a Psychic Spam team with Focus Punch, Shed Shell, Abra. And the idea is to Focus Punch Poniard trying to switch in and then escape the trap from Trapinch. And this is the perfect matchup for that set. So you're going to see your typical Mianfu leads, but once Abra comes in, it is going to be able to Focus Punch and then predict the Poniard and knock it out. And when Trapinch tries to Revenge Kill with First Impression, you merely switch out of the First Impression because you have the Shed Shell item. And all of a sudden, it's already a really, really good matchup because you don't have a switch into Abra Psychic. It's going to knock out Mianfu, it's going to knock out Fungus even, and when you try and Revenge Kill it, you can escape the trap, and it's really, really tough to deal with that. Abra tries to Shadow Ball Natu, but Natu is going to be able to U-turn and then knock out the Abra, and now you lose something that can deal with Abra. Very tough. You go to Mianfu here, and something very instructive is that Pharaoh Seed completely counters Porygon, but Noisy still sacrifices the Mianfu, because trapping the Porygon is much more valuable than keeping Mianfu, because that way Porygon was one of the things that can deal with Abra, but now that Porygon is gone, Abra is even more difficult to deal with. Mianfu loses, obviously. Fungus will lose as well. Trapinch can get switched out on, and you're going to see Abra come in again and again. Very tough to deal with, and ultimately Abra is just going to keep coming in again and again, and you cannot stop it. A little bit of switching around, but eventually Abra is just going to keep getting kill after kill because Focus Punch plus Shed Shell is too much to deal with. So India takes a 1-0 lead in the tiebreak, and again, the first team to 2 wins will win the tiebreak. Now we enter into game 2, which is, this is not Sword and Shield, this is Generation 7 Little Cup, so Vullaby is in the tier, Z-moves are in the tier. And we see a really nice opening sequence. So he uses Mianfu, he fakes out the Staryu, this reveals it is not Eviolite, which means it is Z-move Staryu. He scouts out for Z-Fairy with the Mianfu, and then he goes back to Mianfu to scout out for Hidden Power Fire, which it is Hidden Power Fire. So he's able to, with the lead slot, use Mianfu to basically stop Staryu from doing any damage, with Twinkle Tackle and Hidden Power Fire both doing absolutely nothing. So really good play from Mianfu, and now Staryu has to switch out, and you fake out here. I would have liked to have seen a U-turn, because you know the Staryu is switching out, it can't touch you. Definitely you could have U-turned for momentum, and you're going to give Vullaby weak armor and you don't have a switch into Vullaby. And that's really the thing about Generation 7. Fake out is not free damage whenever Vullaby is in the tier. Whenever Vullaby is in the tier, your fake out is potentially creating a huge threat. So you have to be careful about fake out. You can't spam it as you could in Generation 8. So you fake out into the Vullaby. Now Vullaby can do whatever it wants. In this case, it decides to U-turn. Now into Mudbray to get Stealth Rock up. Now Timber comes in. Timber is going to knock off the Spritzee, and then he has two choices. Does he go to Fungus or Poniard on the Spritzee? And he goes to Poniard predicting Covet, and Spritzee takes the choice Scarf. Now this is very important. It's a strategic decision by Toto to go to Poniard and not Fungus. And the reason is to break down the defensive core of Spritzee and Pharaoh. He wanted some way of damaging Spritzee, and by giving it a choice Scarf, you really neutralize Spritzee. And now Timber can become a really big threat because it can switch in on Pharaoh Seed and throw off Drain Punches, and Spritzee has a Choice Scarf, which is really problematic. However, and the reason this is a strategic decision and a decision you shouldn't make lightly, is because without Scarf Poniard, you're going to have more trouble versus Abra. Typically, the Scarf Poniard Timber core is because Timber can Mach Punch to remove Focus Sash, and then Poniard can use Pursuit to remove Abra. By making this trade, by trading the Choice Scarf, you're basically saying, I'm going to win with Timber before you can win with Abra. It's basically a strategic gamble to decide, I'm going to win with Timber before you're going to win with Abra. That's basically the idea when you lose your Choice Scarf this easily. So basically it's going to come for Toto, it's going to be about using that decision and making the most of it. So we're going to see some switch-ins. Again, Timber is going to farm that Pharaoh. Here it gets paralyzed, but it could have done good damage here. And we're just going to see some switching around, getting good damage, trading damage. Vullaby comes in, U-turn on the Vullaby. Vullaby is a big threat, especially with Spritzee having its item removed. So it's going to be really tough to deal with Wallaby. U-turns here as Spritzy is not going to be able to do much to Fungus, so it'll just wish up. Going to Pharaoh Seed, healing that up, and Timber predicting the Pharaoh Seed, and Toto is really playing to his game plan. He knows that he has to expose the Spritzy weakness, and he's predicting the Pharaoh, he's going Timber, he's making all the plays to punish the Spritzy before the Abra can punish him. And Spritzy is just entering the game. Unfortunately, it does get paralyzed again, but the game plan is very clear, and he's executing getting the Timber in and punishing that weakened Spritzy. Finally, Spritzy gets sacrificed here because it's just too low health, not really useful. Mudbray comes in on Staryu, basically revealing its Choice Scarf, because otherwise it wouldn't make any sense to go Mudbray on a Staryu. Knocks out the Mudbray here. And again, Timber comes in again. And this turn in particular is very instructive. Again, Fake Out is not free. You have options. You can U-turn, you can do whatever you want. But when you Fake Out, you're letting the Vullaby come in, and now the Vullaby can do whatever it wants, basically. So now you have to go to your own Vullaby to switch in. It gets U-turned on, takes damage. Now Timber can go, Poniard can come in to live any hit and then throw off another Iron Head, for example. Knocks off the Mianfu. And again, another Fake Out into the Vullaby. You could have U-turned here, but you Fake Out, now the Vullaby is a threat again. You could have U-turned to put yourself in better position. The Fake Out itself didn't really accomplish much. Now Vullaby is going to be able to defog and then U-turn because it's just too fast, too strong. So you go to Staryu again, big threat Staryu, you try and force it out with Mudbray. So you force it to something and then you go Mianfu predicting Fungus. And again, you can U-turn but you Fake Out and again you create another opportunity for Vullaby to be a threat. He uses that Vullaby to predict the Pharaoh Seed switch in and go Timber. And now Timber is going to keep collecting the damage it needs. And you'll notice it's turn 40 almost, right? And you've seen this Timber come out so many times, but you haven't seen the Abra do anything. It's not exposing the weakness of the lack of Choice Scarf Poniard. It's not doing anything. It's just sitting there in the back. Meanwhile, Timber is, collecting damage, throwing off knockoff, throwing off drain punches, and Toto's game plan is working. Very difficult to switch into Timber here. You're going to end up sacking Mianfu to get damage on Timber, and now you're going to be able to revenge kill with Abra. Now Abra is coming in the game. It'll take that Mach Punch damage. You're going to be able to deglean the Timber. Staryu is going to come in for the speed tie, because again, Abra is very difficult to deal with. And now it goes to Fungus, and this is a very critical turn, because Abra does not knock out Fungus with a Psychic. Fungus has just enough health, it'll live at 96%. So Abra, because it's so valuable, should be switching out to Pharaoh. But Pharaoh Seed is such an obvious switch in. So Vullaby can come in on the Pharaoh Seed, predict, and then throw off a knockoff. Poniard can come in on the Pharaoh Seed, predict, throw off a knockoff. Very difficult. No, not very difficult. Very easy to predict the Pharaoh Seed. So if you're the Abra user, do you predict Toto to predict the Pharaoh Seed? Do you attack using Hidden Power, Fighting, or Fire, knowing that Toto is going to predict your Pharaoh? What do? It's a very tough situation, and both players are aware that the other person is competent enough to understand there is a double switch in play. So Mikhaev goes for Hidden Power Fire to predict Vullaby or Poniard, but Toto knows that Abra is going to stay in. Well, he doesn't know it, he's predicting it. He's predicting that Mikhaev is going to predict the Fungus. He predicts that Abra is going to stay in and try and predict him. So he predicts the prediction. He gets a Spore on Abra, which is really, really valuable considering how much damage Abra can do. And now it's another predict. The Pharaoh Seed play is still there. So do you predict Pharaoh Seed again? Or do you predict Toto to predict the Pharaoh Seed? What do? He goes to Mudbray predicting Toto to go Vullaby or Poniard to predict the Pharaoh. But Toto just uses Giga Drain here. And now it's really, really tough because now Mudbray took a lot of damage. It'll die in one hit to Poniard. It'll die in one hit to Vullaby. So Toto makes two really aggressive plays, predicting Mikhaev to be aggressive about Pharaoh Seed. And it worked out really well for him. And ultimately, Pharaoh Seed at full, Poniard in the back, is going to be very difficult to actually deal with Poniard. And Poniard is just going to win the game. So France and India tie the game back up at 1-1. And we enter into game 3. And I am not playing this series, I wasn't able to make the games. So now we have Blim playing against Skiroko. And Skiroko is using a dark spam type of team, and it's a really cool archetype where the idea is basically Poniard will spread knockoff, and then Carvanha will finish with Crunch and Psychic Fangs. So, for example, if Poniard can knock off Mianfu, then Psychic Fangs will from Carvanha will Oko the Mianfu. And one problematic thing about Blim's team is that his Pharaoh Seed is specially defensive Pharaoh Seed for Porygon. That means Carvanha is going to be able to do a lot of damage to Pharaoh, even though typically it wouldn't normally be able to do that much damage. But because it's specially defensive, Carvanha can do a little more damage to Pharaoh. So it's going to be conflicting ideas, Natu and Porygon trying to break down the Poniard, and the Dark Spam trying to break down Blim. So we see the Carvanha lead into the Mianfu. Mianfu doesn't die to Psychic Fangs, so he's free to just U-turn out. So U-turn on the flip turn does 42 Life Orb damage, only 5% in Little Cup. U-turn on the Coughing, that's going to bring out Natu. And Natu is already basically getting good momentum with Natu and Mianfu, bringing in Scarf Porygon to throw off Tri-Attack. You're going to do really good damage to Mianfu. Then you're going to be doing good damage to Poniard. You get lucky with Tri-Attack hacks. You get a paralysis on Poniard as well. And it's looking really good. You're getting a lot of momentum with your Mianfu, Natu, Porygon core, but you always have to be worried because that momentum can evaporate instantly with Pokemon like Carvanha or Poniard. So Natu U-turns here, Carvanha comes in to take momentum. It protects first. You probably could have switched out there, but this is fine, it was a predict. And now the specially defensive Pharaoh Seed is coming back to haunt, as now Crunch is able to 2-hit KO Pharaoh Seed. So he stays in, predicting a Carvanha to predict him. So a good predict. He's going to knock off, predicting Natu again. So the predicts are keeping him in the game, but now he's really weak to Carvanha. Marini is basically the only thing that can stop the Carvanha now, and Carvanha is just going to keep coming back in again and again. So you see Protect here. Flip turn because it's Psychic Fangs does not one-hit KO Marini. Sludge Bomb into the Coughing. And this is annoying because Coughing's neutralizing gas will stop Marini from healing with regen. Thunderbolt here, and now Coughing is very difficult to switch into. It takes the Pharaoh Seed as a sacrifice. Porygon is going to be trying to revenge kill, but the Poniard is too much. And Blim makes a bold predict. He tries to go Trapinch immediately on Poniard, but then he ends up just sacrificing Trapinch to Poniard because he switched in on a knockoff and then Sucker Punch knocked him out. And now he doesn't really have a switch into Poniard because Mianfu is so low health, but because he goes to Marini, Poniard is going to be able to knock off the Marini, and now you lose to Carvanha, because Psychic Fangs and Crunch will Oko the rest of the team. So you cannot stop Carvanha anymore. You can try pivoting around, but ultimately Carvanha is just going to break through everything. And ultimately, France wins the game. India is eliminated from the playoffs of the Little Cup World Cup, and France moves on to the next round. A little bit disappointing, especially I couldn't make it to the last round. But I did lose one game in the regular part of this round, so I can't complain too much. And yeah, this was a little disappointing, definitely. But yeah, if you like this type of video content, make sure to like and subscribe and let me know down in the comments below. But yeah, thank you for watching.